Good afternoon, everyone. This is Councilmember Mario Castillo. We are going to let folks have another minute to join. We're still getting some people hopping on, and then we will kick things off. Okay, we're all ready to go. I first want to thank everyone for being on this virtual tax rate town hall on a Sunday afternoon. It's an important topic, and we really appreciate your feedback and your input. And we're also here to educate as well about this process and what this setting the tax rate is that we do every year. So again, my name is Councilmember Mario Castillo, District H City Council member. I'm joined here by two colleagues, Councilmember Sally Alcorn for our At-Large 5 and Councilmember Joaquin Martinez for District I. I believe Councilmember Ramirez is also on from the At-Large 1 office. Councilmember Alcorn and Martinez will have some things to share here shortly, just to go over how this will work today. So we're going to walk through a presentation by Councilmember Alcorn about the tax rate. She's going to share some information about sort of the picture and what is happening here at the city and with other what has happened historically with our tax rate and provide information. Councilmember Martinez is going to talk about, why we have come to this town hall today. Some of you may know we've come together to consider a rate of 55 cents per $100 of assessed value. And he'll talk about why that has come to be. And then we're going to go into a public comment period where we hear from you directly about how you feel and your thoughts around this. If you have questions during the presentation, so the portion that Councilmember Alcorn is doing, feel free to raise your hand, ask those questions, and then we'll get to public comments afterwards. This is an important discussion. What we're considering is a tax rate for 2025 that would bring in revenues to help us recover from our storms that we faced this year. This is not about increasing the size of our government or adding new departments. This is really about paying for the damage that we've sustained for our share, what FEMA won't cover, and looking at rebuilding and recovering fully from those things. And this is our process here with setting our tax rate. So I also want to thank IT and the city finance department for helping us pull this together. And finance has a representative here as well as IT on a Sunday afternoon. So thank you all so much for helping to make this happen. I will turn it over now to Council Member Martinez.
Thank you, Councilman Castillo. And without reiterating too much, I definitely want to just say thank you to Finance Department, to my colleagues that have joined to submit a Proposition A. And I want to kind of set the tone by saying that we do not want to make these decisions in a vacuum. This is something that has been discussed. We've had a budget finance committee about a month and a half ago. We've continued to have these discussions afterwards, but then also just to be, again, transparent, we had budget workshops earlier this year. The budget workshops essentially really was a telltale of what we're going to be by the end of fiscal year 25 into fiscal year 26. And in this case in particular, as Councilmember Castillo has mentioned, we're talking about adjusting the tax rate for this fiscal year to address recovery that is about $40 million, addressing $230 million deficit that we would cover that 25%. Also want to make sure that as we discuss this, know that this is not your only opportunity to have a discussion. We have public session every Tuesday. We welcome everyone to continue to make sure that we're having these conversations, but then also note that we will have a public hearing as well, and that'll be discussed in the presentation. This is also an opportunity, as I mentioned, to address the disasters that recently happened, Derecho and Beryl. There is precedence for this. I don't think that we've ever have had a tax rate town hall in this capacity or this manner before. But please note that in 2016, the Memorial Day, 2017, the tax day, and Imelda FY 2021, the tax rate was adjusted to be able to address disasters. So as we continue to listen to this presentation, we are here to soak in this information. I know that you received questions about what kind of services you'll get. I appreciate Councilmember Castillo again sharing that this is not to increase services. This is to address a disaster that we have taken on this fiscal year. And with that, I'm going to transition over to Councilmember Sally Alcorn, who will lead us in the presentation. And we look forward to having, again, one of many discussions. And now just close with this. This is a Prop A that we're discussing. Previous Prop A's probably have never had this much engagement. And I want to make sure that, we appreciate the voters allowing us to utilize this tool. And we're, as your council members and elected officials, want to make sure we're utilizing it efficiently and effectively as well. So I'll turn it over to you, Councilmember Alcorn.
Thank you very much. And I am so grateful to all of you who are joining us this afternoon. I know it's a Sunday afternoon, so appreciate your willingness to be here and to talk about a very important matter affecting our city and our tax rate. My colleagues, I want to thank my vice chair. I'm the chair of the Budget and Fiscal Affairs Committee for the city. My vice chair, Mario Castillo, has taken the lead on this town hall. Very grateful for the participation of Councilmember Martinez and also Plummer, who I know has staff on board. And hello to Councilmember Ramirez, who is listening. I was kind of reading through some of the RSVPs and the comments, and I want to thank you all for your very thoughtful questions, your very thoughtful comments. Somebody submitted like a 10-point plan. I mean, people have put a lot of thought into this, and I'm very grateful for that. And that's what this is all about. This is really just about kind of talking about our tax rate in a way that as a council body, we really haven't done in a while. So we'll just jump right into the presentation. And this is not really my presentation, so part of it's mine, but am I on now? It muted me for a second. Can everyone hear me? Okay. This is based on a September 9th, 2024 Budget and Fiscal Affairs Committee meeting that we had, where the Finance Department came and presented on our tax structure and also on the.
You're muted again, Sally.
Yeah, something's happening. Somebody's like muting. I'm not touching anything, but it's muting me. Just let me know if it happens again. These are based on these slides. Some of these slides are based on the September 9th, 2024 Budget and Fiscal Affairs Committee meeting where Finance presented it. So we can just jump right into the slides. Okay, so this is basically the what Finance laid out as our expenses associated with the derecho and Hurricane Beryl. You see that debris removal is a large expense, the biggest expense of all of this. We have those numbers are different FEMA categories that we have to categorize our disaster expenditures. You see emergency protective measures, roads and bridges, buildings and equipment, utilities, parks. You can see what all we have to pay. The total estimate for both storms is around $211 million. We get reimbursed by FEMA for 75% of that amount. So you see that we will be reimbursed about $159 million, and we'll still owe $39 million. The total amount we'll owe is actually more like $52 million, but some of that is covered by the enterprise funds, public works, airports, things that sustain themselves. The number we're concerned about is that 40 million, that $39.9 million number that we have to cover, that we did not budget for. We've already drawn down 23 million out of our emergency reserves that we have to put back in by financial policies. So that's the $40 million number that we're concerned with having to cover with our current budget. So the next slide, please. These were the tax rate scenarios that the finance director presented at the September 9th meeting. Our current tax rate right now is 51.9190 per $100 valuation. That is our current tax rate, and that is a tax rate being proposed by the administration to stay even. And that, as you see, will require $86 million in cuts. And then it will also, that includes paying for the disaster recovery. So basically 46 million in cuts and 40 to pay for the disaster. The next level is 1.7 cents, and that's actually the rate using the calculation that we've used over the last 10 years, which covers our Proposition 1 and Proposition H, which is the the City of Houston voter-imposed property tax revenue cap, which is the lesser of 4.5% growth or CPI plus population. This year, that's when we set the tax rate. That is the calculation we use. You'll see in a later slide that we've lowered the tax rate in 9 out of the last 10 years because of valuation staying fairly flat. This would be kind of the year we would also have to go up a little bit, the 1.7 cents, if we use the same calculation we've been using for the last 10 years. The Prop A submission is C, 3.2 cents. That requires no cuts to our current budget and enables us to pay for the disaster. Now, as Councilmember Martinez noted, this has been done in Memorial Day in FY 2016. We added 15.9 million. That was our amount that we had to add to the calculation. In tax day FY 2017, we added 6.1 million to the revenue cap. And on Imelda in FY 2021, we added 2.4 million to the revenue cap. Now, in those years, we did include the disaster amounts, exactly what the council members and I that are proposing this are doing right now. That is exactly what we did in those storms. The difference is because of growing valuations, the tax rate did not go up. It actually went down, but that was because of valuations. It all depends on valuations. So we didn't raise the taxes to collect that amount, but we collected more than we would have under scenario B. D and E are just here for illustrative purposes. Those are the state imposed amounts that we could collect. It's important for me to say all 5 of these options are completely allowable and lawful under our local property tax revenue cap and the state law that says rates can only go up 3.5%, but they can go up 8% according to the state law, the law that was passed in recent couple sessions ago. So all of these are lawful. My colleagues and I settled on C because that was the one that had precedence. That's the one the city has used before. And we think it's important to note that the voters, when they voted in 2004 to limit property tax revenues, the language included language about if there's a disaster, you can add the costs of the disaster to your calculations. The state law also added it. So this was something that was thought about by each body, and voters, at least on the city side, voted on that. And at the state level, they also made allowances for disaster. So that's on that. So you can see the impact to the average homeowner. This is based on a $300,000 home, which is around the average homestead in Houston paying taxes. You can see the different rates. The one that the mayors, of course, would have, the administrations would have no change in your taxes. And the one we are proposing would be 104 annually. The over 65 and disabled amount would be $19.87. All right, next slide. Just to take into consideration, I said $86 million in cuts. This just gives you an idea of some of our general fund departments and what what the budgets are. $86 million of cuts is a lot of money. Our whole library department's $52 million. Our parks department's $89 million. This just gives you an idea of kind of where the city budget and these general fund departments. And again, we're just talking about the general fund here because that's our tax supported budget. That's what's supported by property taxes and sales tax. All right, next slide. This is really important. I hope you can read it. This was something that was presented by the finance department during our budget deliberations. And we all know that the city is facing some significant financial issues. We have been for years, and we're still facing them. So we are, the finance director outlined what we expect our budget gaps to be each year. So you see, we did the first column, current excluding HFD. This was done before we did the firefighter contract, the new firefighter contract. So you can ignore that line. But pessimistic, which is kind of our situation now. Hate to be pessimistic, but we're looking at a potential in FY 2026, which starts on July 1st of 25. We're facing around a $230 million deficit. 27, $285 million. 28, $348 million, 2029, $389 million. The optimistic version is a series of things, including new revenues. So that would be the bulk of which would, if we come to the voters in the future for an increase in property taxes to be spent for public safety or infrastructure, that is kind of what that's about. So that's the optimistic line. So that's definitely with new revenues coming in. Okay, next slide. You can see here kind of what I was describing again a few minutes ago about the tax rate being lowered over time. You can see there there was one time when it actually went up a little bit, but over the last, I think it was 2019, went up a little bit, and that again was because of flatter valuations. The bigger the valuations are, that's when we have to lower the rate. If they're kind of under 5% on the valuations, you'll have to go up a bit, and that would be the same amount as this. That would be the same amount. That would be what would happen this year. This is another year like 2019, where we would have a slight increase, not even counting the disaster. We would have a slight increase if we were using the same calculation as we have been using. All right, next slide. This is other city comparisons on tax rates. And I want to be clear, even on the last slide too, we totally understand that it's not just the tax. Who cares if the tax rate's going down if your valuations are up, right? You're paying more taxes. And we fully understand that. Valuations are a key consideration in the tax rate. This is just a discussion on the rate, and we know that valuations play a big part in that. City Council is not involved in the valuation. That's the Harris County Appraisal District. 2 years ago, we had a 13% increase in our valuations. This past year was about a 3.8%. So they've leveled off a little bit. But this is just you can see that the other cities, San Antonio, Dallas, Fort Worth, El Paso, have higher rates. Austin has a lower rate, but higher average valuations. And I have those numbers for you too. The other numbers are garbage fees. Each of these other cities have a garbage fee. We have our, about a $90+ million solid waste budget that we cover with our existing general fund and our ad valorem and sales tax. Our general fund monies cover ours. We don't have a garbage fee. And then some others for water and utilities, you can see the cities collect. So those are other revenue sources for these other cities. But you'll notice the tax rate in Houston, other than Austin, is the lowest in the state. And, valuations matter. We're about even on the average home value with Dallas. So their average home value is about 310. It's right around ours. They pay they're a higher rate, and the average bill is about $2,297. In Houston, it's about $1,606. This again is on that 309,000. Valuations in Austin are 478,000. That's the difference there. They have a lower rate, but they're actually collecting more. They're like 2131 is their part. So we understand about and valuations in El Paso are lower. So that is the why they have such a high rate, I'm assuming. All right. These are just some financial considerations I wanted to kind of talk about a little bit, because my colleagues are exactly right. We are not here trying to do a money grab. We are not here trying to expand anything. We're not trying to do anything except cover the money for the derecho and not make additional significant cuts. I mean, we're all about efficiencies and things, and I'll get to that in a minute. But we are here about this extra $40 million and about the calculation that we could do to collect that. But we have additional considerations. We have that $230 million budget deficit staring us in the face coming soon. So there's things that affect that. And that's another reason that we think it's important to bolster our revenues to not be further in the hole. We have obviously the contractual obligations. The police are in their contractual obligations right now. They will have a salary increase that they deserve, and we'll have to cover that. The municipal contract just completed its negotiations. We'll be voting on that soon. It's about $10 million to our FY25 budget, and then another 3.5% raise the year after that, and another 3.5% raise after that. And then the firefighter deal adds about $35 million per year to cover the refunding bonds for the $650 million back pay to firefighters, and then about $46 million per year in the salary increases and incentives over the next 5 years. So those are the big, the city is a service organization. We're made up of people. A lot of those are public safety personnel. So we're very cognizant of the cost of keeping our people and recruiting people. Ambulances. We have during the budget season, there was a big push, basically an immediate need for new ambulances, about 20 new ambulances, which has a cost of about $7 million in just the ambulances. And then to staff them using our current personnel would cost us about $9 million in overtime. And if we hired the additional new firefighters to cover those ambulances, that's a cost of about another $13.5 million. You all are aware of the HPD patrol and investigations, the suspended because lack of personnel, the SL kind of issue that arose that because, we had a police chief 10 years ago telling us that we didn't have the the personnel to do all the investigations. And we are at the same level of police that we were 10 years ago, 20 years ago. We know we need to hire additional police officers. So we know that's important to Houstonians. We also have very much lower pay for our police officers. Year one pay in Houston is $42,000. In Katy, it's $65,000. Sugar Land, $75,000. Dallas, $70,000. San Antonio, $56,000. So we know in order to recruit and retain good officers, we're going to need a raise there. Streets and drainage. You don't have to drive around Houston too long to experience the problems that we have with streets and drainage. We want to put more investment in streets and drainage. That's an important consideration. Another consideration we have, it's a complex litigation. I won't go into the nuts and bolts of it, but we have a lawsuit that the city's facing that the Supreme Court will make a ruling on about our expenditures for streets and drainage. And if the plaintiffs are successful, this would add upwards of $100 million per year out of our ad valorem tax revenue to go towards streets and drainage. So we have to come up with that. And then, of course, there's all the quality of life issues. There's $7 million worth of critical needs at the parks over the next 4 years. Solid waste. I know everybody's struggled with pickups. We've got solid waste drivers working 18 hours a day, and neighborhood nuisances. We've been told we need 20 more code enforcement offices. The list goes on and on. Deferred maintenance of city facilities is $500 million and growing. We have a lot of financial considerations that my colleagues and I are faced with during budget season, and quite frankly, through the whole year. I'm talking to constituents and understanding the needs of the constituents. You can go to the next slide. But I also want to say, on a positive note, there's a lot of good things going on. I am very grateful to this administration. I think they've done a great job in looking for ways to cut the budget, and we all want to. I mean, I've cut the budget. It's hard to do, and I've cut the budget a few times. We want to be conservative when we're looking at your tax dollars. We ask hundreds of questions during the budget season, looking for any line item that could be reduced. We right now have an Ernst & Young audit going on, really doing a high-level overview of where we could find more additional cuts, efficiencies, how we can consolidate things, operate in just a leaner fashion. The timing of this is such that I don't know that we'll have all the results of that. Hopefully we'll have some preliminary ones, because we have to set this tax rate by October 28th. And so I'm looking forward to that, and I commend the administration for doing this audit. I think it'll yield some positive results. I really hope it does. I think we need to get the money and do all of these things, facing a $230 million gap. Eliminate vacancies. We eliminated about $11 million worth of vacancies in the last budget, and there's more to come. Reducing duplication, overlapping services, sharing more services with Harris County, whatever we can do to operate more efficiently. The mayor's talked about rooting out any fraud, waste, and abuse. Absolutely, certainly. We want to make sure that the public is confident that that's not going on, and we've kind of tackled that head on. And seeking funding from the county, from the state, from the feds. We want to do that. The mayor has a great relationship with the state. We hope that we get money from the state. We hope we get more money from the feds and the county. I know that many of the commissioners are spending more money in the city on road projects and different things. So we want to do all of these things. We want to put the city on a more financial footing, and these things are important whether we raise the tax rate or not. We will keep doing these, of course. Next slide. Oh, well, that's the end. Okay, so that was a lot to cover, and I saw some questions popping up on the chat. I know that finance has handled some of those, and I'm happy to. My colleagues and we'll all jump in and handle those. I think Councilmember Castillo, I think you're going to handle the order of the questions, or.
Well, before we go into comment, if anyone has questions specifically for any of the material you covered, let's get to those. I see Councilmember Martinez, your hand's raised.
Thank you again, Councilmember Castillo and Councilmember Alcorn. Again, as we kind of start setting the foundation of what these conversations will continue to look like, I really want to stress that getting rid of it, redundancy, making sure that we're doing the best thing that we can with your tax dollars is priority for all of us. Um, we know that historically we've paid more into the county and not received as much county services, and so I know some of the conversation has taken us to, well, the county is doing this. We're about to do an HISD bond. We're going to do a flood control bond for maintenance, and all those things are definitely taken into consideration. But what I really want to stress is that those items will not help us pick up your trash if we cut services, will not help us maintain parks, libraries, and even the basic stuff that people um, like like my colleagues and I are interested in is public safety. All that costs money. And it is our responsibility as city elected officials to ensure that the city is on the right path, financially stable, to be able to provide what you're looking for. And so, again, I understand. I have 4 kids. I have an 18-year-old in college. I have a 9, a 6, and a 4-year-old. That I'm also concerned about, what that looks like for our home, but also understanding that if we want certain services, and quite frankly, I don't think the services that you get are where they're supposed to be, then it's going to have to cost some money. And specifically to addressing this tax rate for this year, I would really hate to have to make decisions on what we need to cut. And so I'll shift it over back to you, Councilmember Castillo, and just want to say thank you to everybody that is participating. I think we had about 70 people registered for this virtual town hall. We should have more of these. We want more of these. We want you all to be engaged, informed as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Martinez. We do have a question here on the slides you covered, Sally. Dominic, you're up.
Can you hear me, Mario?
Yes, we got you.
Okay, this is Dominic Mazak. I want to make one question. Well, I got a comment. I think we need more of these. I think this should have been done before the bike lanes were put in. And I think this needs to be done in concern with the sidewalk issue. One thing I do have a concern about is, we, the citizens, property owners, are being asked to pitch in for this. I can see it, but I think there needs to be some justification in the sense of the turds. They keep so much, the tax, they have a pay in the city, and then they keep so much money within their little districts. But I think for it to be fair for everybody, they need to pitch in a little bit more also. With that, I'm sending it back to you, Mario. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comment there. Before we move on, any questions on the slides that were covered?
I will say, Councilmember Castillo, if you don't mind, to address Dominic's concern about the TERS. We instituted TERS policies last year because many people have concerns about the TERSs taking, nearly a quarter of the property tax valuation, and so there was a big discussion, a big 42-page document put out, done to have really outline policies on life extensions of TERS, on issuing debt, on expanding boundaries. All of those things were done as a result. I'm sure many of you recall the big Chronicle series that focused on the TERSs. So those policies were put in place to put up some guardrails and make sure we're looking at that. In addition, this week on the City Council agenda, we have an item. You heard me talk about the Ernst & Young study. We're adding some money to that contract to do a complete spend analysis on all of the TERSs. We want to make sure that those funds are being spent properly, and they're also going to do forensic accounting on some select TERSs. So I hear you, Dominic, on the TERSs, and I think the administration and all council members want to make sure that the TERS fund, the tax increment reinvestment zones, for anyone not knowing TERS lingo, that we're spending those properly. So thanks for bringing that up.
Thanks, Sally. See you later.
And on that note, we did receive questions when folks RSVP'd. Before we move into public comments, I want to cover a couple of the questions we received so that we can answer them all in front of the group here. You know, someone asked how duplications and remedies are being addressed. We are in the middle of an Ernst & Young efficiency study that is going on at the moment. There's an item on the agenda, as Councilmember Alcorn mentioned, to expand the scope to cover TERSs, and it's looking for duplications and inefficiencies and redundancies that can be addressed. So we are in the process of addressing those directly. Will the rate be enough to cover the debt caused by the firefighter deal? No, this rate that we have proposed would only be enough to take in recovery costs from the storms from this year. It won't include revenue to pay for anything else beyond our recovery. So not the firefighter deal. Someone asked if City Council has the ability to offer a credit to lower income Houstonians, a tax credit, so that the rate does not adversely impact them. We do not have that ability. What we do have the ability to do is to increase the exemption for seniors, and that has been done in the past. So we can't issue a tax credit for folks, but we can increase an exemption that seniors utilize for their tax bill. Some of the other questions were already covered in Councilmember Alcorn's presentation. So we're going to move on to the public comment where we can hear from you directly. Everyone who wants to speak will get 2 minutes. All you have to do is raise your hand. We're going to call on you. You'll have your 2 minutes. This meeting is being recorded, and we have folks that are taking notes. So if there are specific follow-ups, if you are proposing questions that we just need a little more time to get you the information on, we're going to do that. So just be a little patient with us, and we'll be able to get back to you. We do have your emails from your RSVP, but we absolutely want to hear from you on this topic. So with that, I'm going to start calling on folks. First one is Lisa Hunt. Lisa, you're up.
Lisa, you're muted still. I see you trying to talk.
Having some audio issues here. We can't hear her. Okay, we'll come back to you, Lisa. Next, we're going to move on to Elena Pencil.
Hi, can you hear me?
We got you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for doing this. I do appreciate this town hall meeting on the Zoom on a Sunday, actually, and I wish you will continue doing this so it will be beneficial to Second Ward and some of my residents. My comments about the increase, I understand that sometimes we have to take tough decisions, and I totally agree with you guys on increasing it. My problem is to keep the increase for a long time. Let's see if you approve the increase for a year, like it was described to us. Well, just keep it for a year. Don't take it as it's something that we need it for a long time. If you do not learn how to budget within the city system. My issue with a tax increase is that it's reflecting on the rental prices in Second Ward in an Eastwood, because that increase actually affects the small landlords, and I represent some of those landlords that don't have 100 properties. They do have 1 or 2 properties that they rent, and in order for them to make a little bit of profit, they have to actually have to keep their expenses low. We have seen an increase on property taxes, and we have seen an increase on insurance, which gives the fact that the landlords have to increase the rents at the end. So my problem is like, yes, we are all asking for affordable housing, but at the same time, we're not giving those landlords, small landlords in my neighborhood, a break. And that is my only concern. If you're going to increase it, well, 1 year it's enough, but if you keep that increase subsequently, we cannot afford it. I have landlords that are actually forcing to sell their properties with tenants that have been in place for 10 and 15 years or 7 years because they can no longer afford the insurance nor the tax rates. So thank you. That's my comment.
Thank you so much for your comment, Elena. You know, on that, just to reiterate, you know, our city council is going to adopt a rate by October 28th for the 2025 year, which is what we have to do. It's our obligation, and we go through this process every year. So every year we're adopting a rate for the coming year. We have two revenue caps that we're under, a city imposed and a state. And so the finance department calculates the population and I believe what am I missing? Is the
Inflation.
inflation.
Yeah.
That's it. And inflation to determine what, you know, the parameters are for the tax rate. So we do have to stay within those parameters because we are under the disaster, two disasters that we've had. You saw the slide that showed different rates and what they would bring in. So this is a process that we go through every year. It's not a rate that would go into effect and that rate stay in effect, you know, in perpetuity. This is something we have to come together and do. And without a disaster, we can't go above a certain percentage. So there are guardrails there to make sure that what is passed and adopted by council this month in October goes into effect in 2025. It doesn't stay that way, you know, indefinitely.
If I might add, Councilmember Castillo,
Yep.
the future tax rate are dependent on those calculations that we do each year. They depend entirely on the Prop 1 cap, the voter imposed revenue cap, CPI and population. They also depend on valuations. And the calculation of the state cap. So that calculation's every year, each year that calculation's different, and it's a series of calculations that goes on that has to live within those caps. So I want to be clear, since we don't know the next year's valuations, we don't know what that number will be. It's impossible for us to say, you know, if this rate will go up or down. If valuations if are like they were 2 years ago, 13%, above 10%, you'll have a decrease. If they're kind of flat, you know, the tax rate could stay flat or go up. You know, it all depends on those valuations and how they fit into the calculations under the local cap and the state cap. I hope that helps.
And if I can just chime in just a bit more, because we're talking about the Harris Central Appraisal District, those valuations, you know, you would be, yeah, folks might have you believe that we control that valuation. We don't. And I had made a comment around the horseshoe that this is a layered conversation as well. So the Harris Central Appraisal District is governed, of course, by 6 directors, but it's regulated by the Texas Property Tax Division at the Comptroller's Office. And I share that because one of the biggest things that I've been having discussions about is that we cannot see this in silos. There's state reps and state senators that you should have this conversation with as well. This coming year, we're about to start a new legislative session. These are important conversations that you should be having consistently. And as folks are mentioning, this town hall, it's something that's new. We've never done this before. but we should be, as elected officials, held accountable to these types of engagement. And I would hope that you would do that as well with everybody else when you're talking about Harris County Flood Control, Harris County Hospital District, Harris County Department of Education. Every taxing entity should be have some touch to by their residents. And so my hope is that hopefully we can help a trend to move in that direction as well.
Thank you both for your comments. And thank you, Elena, for the question. Next up, we have Neil. Neil, you are our next speaker.
All right, thank you. Thank you to council members Alcorn, Castillo, and Martinez for being out front with this issue. You didn't have to be. And thank you for using the Prop A process for including this town hall to include people, which is different than we've seen in a more recent Prop A thing. So this is consistent with what the voters asked for. I would just say, in terms of a state partner, I have seen 2 different state reps comment about wishing to get rid of the disaster exemptions in the next legislative session. In terms of federal partners, if we are under Project 2025 next year, we will have no federal partner. And every prospect exists of significant police overtime in the months after the election under some of the rhetoric we are hearing. So I would encourage all of us as Houstonians to, first of all, have the backs of the council members who went out on a limb with this. And then, frankly, if we do not advocate for ourselves as a city, we cannot count on any other partner to do so. And if we can't advocate for ourselves in the face of climate change brought about disasters, what exactly can we advocate ourselves for? This is just money to make us whole. Not even the expansion of services, which we all know is needed as well, basic services. So thank you all very much. And that's what I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil, for your comments and for being here today. Next up, we have Charles.
Hello,
Charles,
can you guys hear me?
Yep, we got you.
Yeah. Thank you guys for doing this and giving up some time on a Sunday. I really do appreciate it. It's an important conversation. 2 questions. The first one, Councilmember Alcorn, I'm curious if, I remember during the conversations over the firefighter contract that there was a provision in the contract that said if the city brought in more revenue, the firefighters would get more money or something along those lines. So I'm curious if that applies and what that breakout is that we would be seeing in this. And the second question is, I know Councilmember Alcorn has a long track record of fiscal restraint, seen her fight for that time and time again. I'm curious from council members Castillo and Martinez's perspective, what you guys have kind of pushed for cuts, because I understand we do have needs, but kind of what have you guys looked at, whether it's through the recent budget amendments, line items, or where you guys see that the city can cut and reduce costs while also asking taxpayers for more?
I can address the firefighter that came to mind too, but I think that in the firefighter contract, I think that was more of a direct levy or whatever that would be specifically for public safety. But Charles, I appreciate that question and I'll verify that. But I remember when we were approving the contract, that it came up like, what, it can't be subjective, like more revenues, does that mean more fees or whatever? It has to be, I think how it was explained, it has to be a specific raise for public safety that would move us to that. And hopefully my colleagues agree, but I'll get you a definitive on that. That's a very important point.
And
but you want.
So the question, thank you for asking about, what I've looked at in terms of cuts. This past budget cycle, I worked with the administration and Councilmember Alcorn. We got an amendment adopted to study transitioning BARC into a local government corporation, modeled similarly to the zoo, which would help bring in more private money to fund and run BARC. If you look at what has happened to the zoo now, it's overwhelmingly privately funded. The city does still contribute a little to it. But for the majority of the zoo's operating budget, it comes through private money. We need to look at those sorts of things as well, at services that we're providing that we're not providing to a satisfactory level, how we can look at a local government corporation model to bring in, foundation money, private money, other things to help transition that into a way that is successful. I would support looking at those things at other things that we do in terms of our library system. Do we need to have two? Why can't we just have Harris County Library System? And same for our health department. I used to work at the health department, city health department, county health department. They do a lot of the same things, and they're just doing them in different parts of the area based on, unincorporated Harris County versus city of Houston. So I think you can expect to see some more amendments from me next cycle around consolidation, and studying that and what those roadmaps look like, because to me, that makes the most sense in focusing on our core services that we do and deliver, make sure we're doing those well. But where we're doing things that are very, duplicative, I think we need to look at how we can consolidate them. So that's my take on it.
And similarly to Councilmember Castillo, I think duplication of services is top priority. As I kind of alluded to, in 2020, fiscal year 2020, city taxpayers paid about $1.1 billion in general property tax to the county. We received about $890 million in services. And so when we look at libraries, how do we make sure that we can work together? BARC, even parks as well. I tell folks all the time, I don't think anybody cares whether it's the county logo or the city logo at your neighborhood park, as long as it's being maintained. And so we need to figure out how we can continue to reduce those kind of redundancies within the county and the city. In addition, we need to look at how we can bring in revenue. One of my amendments, along with Councilmember Alcorn, was to figure out how we can bring in revenue in the Office of Business Opportunity. We are the regional certifying agency for the this area, and so Port of Houston, HISD, Harris County, I believe Fort Bend County or Montgomery County, one of those, they all utilize our certification for small businesses. We should be having them also help put the bill on what OBO looks like, so that way it's not just the cost on the city. Another one, a huge red flag in the beginning, I think it was in January, we voted for about 33,000 refuse cards, 17,000 new refuse cards for new residents. And for me, that means 17,000 new locations where we have to pick up trash. We need to really figure out on the city side how we can continue to, think, work better, to work smarter. And so reducing number of routes or changing the number of routes, figuring out how we can continue to provide those services. A quick survey that we did probably about 7 years ago was how many times do you get heavy trash pickup, bulk waste, and tree waste? And we weren't seeing every other month or every month these services being utilized. And so we need to make sure that we're not utilizing, which is our highest cost, personnel. And then right behind that is infrastructure like trucks when we're not needed. So instead of combing the city entirely every month for tree waste or bulk waste, we should be working through those inefficiencies to ensure that we're cutting costs as well. And I really want to lean on the Ernst & Young audit. We will find more inefficiencies and more redundancies that we could address. But one thing I definitely want to just, being fully transparent on is we're not going to find $240 million worth of waste, fraud, and redundancy. And so we do need to do a better job within the city to address these and not continue to just be complacent and move budgets the way they've been moving. I really appreciate Councilmember Alcorn for taking this lead for the past, I would say, 4 years, but even prior as a staffer. I know Councilmember Castillo and I are freshman councilors. It might seem like we don't know what we're talking about, but we've sat through budget workshops with Sally for over a month and a half, And it's not easy to manipulate either me or Councilmember Castillo. We're learning from the best. And I really want to say, Sally has really been a trailblazer in this space, and we're going to continue to be transparent, honest, and figure out how we can continue to move forward. So that way the city is somewhere, it's a location that we all can appreciate those services. And I'll just take a point of personal privilege as well. Want to just say happy birthday to Sally, just briefly. It is her birthday. This is how much she is committed
Thank you,
to
Joaquin.
this.
Definitely the way you want to spend your
well-
birthday is at a tax rate town hall, but this is so important. It's a great birthday present.
Yes.
I do want to say,
Yes.
Charles, real quick, I got an answer from the finance department. This will not trigger the firefighter raise escalator because the trigger requires joint efforts by the union and the city. This is not that the revenue be specifically for public safety. This is not that. This is for disaster. And 3, that the revenue must be sufficient to cover the cost for the entire collective bargaining agreement with the firefighters. So no, this 3.2 cent increase would not trigger the firefighter raise escalator. And for those of you who might not know what that is, we have the firefighter raises go out for several years, but if we do get new public safety revenues, they can go up a little bit higher than what's in the contract. So that's what he's talking about.
All right. Thank you, Charles, for the question. And Lisa, if you're back up, we're ready for you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yay. I'm going to say thank you for y'all coming to us. I think this is really important. I also just want to encourage you to exercise the leadership that you have shown on this call to the Horseshoe. I know we're a strong mayor form of government, but I think it's going to take the courage of council members to initiate, as you are today, the conversation about the tax rates and being able to capture this, the disaster money. I support you, and I think others in Houston will. Also, we all know that climate change is coming to Houston, and this is not going to be the first time we have 2 storms in a season. So let's close the gap now, because the gap is only going to get bigger. Thank you.
Thank you for being here and for your comments today. Next up, we have Marion.
Hi, thank y'all again, like everyone said, for doing this. We really do appreciate it, and happy birthday, Sally. So I hope you have a good one. I think people would be okay with spending more money as long as we can actually see something for what's being spent. When I looked at my tax bill and I look at what percentage the city's actually getting, it's not very much. It's a very small amount of what I'm paying in taxes. And I think y'all have to make that more, you have to get that out, because people really don't know and they're not looking at it, the amount that y'all are getting. But y'all do have to get that across to people. But what really stinks is we're still spending all of this money. And like you said, a lot of it's going to Harris County, a lot of it's going to Metro, a lot of it's going to the school system, HISD. And then with a little bit of my money that I do have that's going towards the city, then the tiers is getting it, and this is getting it, and that's getting it. And it's being spread everywhere. And I'm not seeing anything for it. And it really, really, really stinks when basic things like the trash isn't being picked up when it's supposed to. My mom was just involved in a road rage incident. The police never did show up. 4.5 hours later, they never did show up because they just didn't have anyone available. So we ended up exchanging information and going in, and they did write it up as a road rage incident, but nothing's going to happen from it. I mean, the insurance companies are taking care of everything, but we need y'all to really put the money towards what it needs to be put towards and not just throwing it around on pet projects. Thanks.
Thank you, Marion, for your comments and for being a part of our tax rate town hall today. Next up, we have Dr. Pamela. You're our next speaker. Dr. Pamela Bovland. Okay,
won't-
we'll go to.
Oh, wait, it won't unmute.
We can hear you.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Yep, we got you.
Yeah, I do appreciate this this opportunity. The question I have is there any comparisons made to revenue that could be brought in through an increase in the sales tax?
Oh, that's a good question. And I don't believe we have anything on that.
We have, if I might, that's a state, that's set at the state. So
Yeah.
we're capped. We don't have any influence on the sales tax.
If I can say one thing, the sales tax, that's always more volatile, right? We don't know, we can have a FIFA and we get more money. We might not have anything, and then sales tax goes low as far as what we receive. And so, however we continue to build this city that we live in, that attracts more folks as well, to spend money is helpful. But as Councilmember Alcorn mentioned, there is a cap at the state level that doesn't allow us to take the sales tax into consideration.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem. Thank you for your comment and your question. Next up, we have Ricky.
Hello, council members. I just wanted to say thank you for having this town hall, and happy birthday, Councilmember Alcorn. I don't know if my comment, if this is the right forum for discussion on my comment. Somebody mentioned before, we're in the middle of a climate crisis. Things are going to get worse. I know Councilmember Alcorn does No Car Friday, and last week was No Car Week. I'm not sure if anyone participated in this meeting. I also heard a speaker previously to me mention, that small lot renters, I guess, are experiencing hikes with insurance companies. I know in other states, insurance companies are pulling out altogether just because of the frequency of the natural disasters that we're starting to have. Meanwhile, we're getting ready to expect a freeway widening project that's going to last many years, that's been labeled as an improvement project. I think, contributing, carbon emissions, that sort of thing is just only going to make our natural disasters, worse, more frequent. They'll be stronger. So I'm curious to hear, discussion on solutions for reducing carbon emissions and, damaging our climate. Or else I think we'll be, having this discussion, every session, as far as, we're out of money now to kind of support those who need it, as far as, their homes being damaged and, their lives being changed. So again, I'd like to hear more discussion, how we can be more proactive to, in some way, sort of, prevent these disasters from becoming more stronger and frequent. And again, I'm not sure if this is the right forum, but I just wanted to kind of put that out there. Thank you very much.
No, thank you for being here and for making that comment. I mean, we're having this town hall today because we've had two disasters, and we're trying to help the city fully recover from them and have the money to pay for the recovery. So I mean, it's relevant, and I think that being a district council member, I look at things in terms of what can I do to help District H be more resilient. But it does impact, the city as a whole. Harvey impacted the entire city. Some storms impact only parts of the city. And we need to have this perspective as we make our decisions, as we buy vehicles, as we retrofit our buildings. We have some projects coming in for solar farms or micro solar farms, and look at initiatives to get more trees planted throughout the city. And I mean, I think you bring up a relevant point. Not necessarily how it impacts our tax rate, but just how we as a city are preparing for these more frequent and common disasters. So thank you for being here and for your comment. Our final speaker is Michael Roberts.
Hey, good afternoon. Following up very much on that last comment and then the commenter that talked about the possibility of 2 storms within a season. Looking at what's about to happen in Tampa this week, Helene comes through on September 26th, creates debris all over the city. The city and FEMA don't have the resources to deploy in time to clean up before the next major hurricane hits. So that compounds the overall costs of disaster response and recovery. Kind of makes an option that would create dedicated sources of reserves for response and recovery, seem pretty wise. But following along with the dedicated drainage and street renewal fund, it would be wise to go ahead and account for the full costs of fully funding that program. For every dollar that is spent on pre-disaster mitigation, AKA stormwater management, a $15 cost savings can be expected in response and recovery costs. One concrete way to offset the impact of any increases on from funding the drainage fund or raising the rate would be to get the Houston Permitting Center the resources it needs. Right now, since 2009, the city has been a Class 5 in the FEMA community rating system, which means that there's a 25% discount on all national flood insurance policies. This is a strong rating. Harris County's a 7, and they only get a 15% discount. But getting the permitting center the resources they need to move to Class 4 would raise the discount on NFIP premiums to 30% and offset the cost for homeowners. But looking at the costs of reducing the cost of future disasters, I think will have a dramatic impact, increasing the ability to balance the budget in the out years. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael, for your comments. In addition to being very ingrained in our budget, Councilmember Alcorn's been ingrained on the permitting side. I know Councilmember Martinez and I have talked about the permitting challenges that we face. So maybe the 3 of us will get together and see what we can come up with there. But I do know that that is also a priority for the administration. And it is something that, as we talk about all these different costs that are squeezing folks from insurance, and even from folks that want to build or remodel, the permitting factor does play an impact, and it is something that we absolutely need to improve, and especially as we see what companies are doing in other parts of the country, pulling out completely from covering areas. So well said, and thank you for your comments there. We have no one else who is in the queue to speak. So that will conclude our town hall today. This was a great conversation. Thank you all so much for being a part of it. I hope this was helpful to you in terms of our tax rate process and what we're going through and what we have put out to the public. Before we wrap up, Councilmember Alcorn, do you have any final words?
No, just thank you for everybody's comments and everybody that participated. This is important, and I really appreciate your input. It matters. Thank you.
Councilmember Martinez, any final words?
And I just echo what Councilmember Alcorn mentioned. Just a bit ago, thank you all. This is real government working with you all. Transparent, honest is something that I know all 4 of us, even with Councilmember Plummer, we want to continue these conversations. Again, this is the first time we had a tax rate town hall, or previously we've had to increase or adjust the tax rate for a storm or for disaster. Please know that the October 16th public hearing is open to you all, 9 o'clock at City Hall. Don't let this be the last time you engage with us. We cannot do this without you. So again, just thank you all. Thank you to my colleagues for spending their Sunday, their birthday with us. Really appreciate you, Sally, for your leadership, honestly, for the last 4 years as a council member. And just know that you have folks that are ready to pick up the torch as well.
Yes. Happy birthday to you, Sally. I tell folks when it comes to committees, I hit the lottery because I get to work with Sally as the chair of Budget and Fiscal Affairs. She is the absolute best, and I've learned a lot. And I appreciate her and Councilmember Martinez and Councilmember Plummer as well. Thank you all for being here and being a part of this. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
Bye, everyone.